Hi everyone, thanks for joining me yet again out here at Orange County National. Today I want to take a look at bends and achieving rotation in the backswing. I want to start off with conceptually a few things to consider. I'm going to put up a 3D graph of a really good ball striker that really is just a good example of what I've seen with a lot of really good ball strikers. And secondly, then following the concepts, we'll move on to the common area that I see a lot of players go wrong, so a common fault that relates to this topic. And third of all, we'll move on to a drill, a few feels, and a way to train how you could move throughout backswing to help you with your ball striking. Okay, so before I go into the main content of this video, if you are liking the content, if you like where I'm going with this video, please remember to hit subscribe. Okay, so conceptually, let's look at how we could move. So I'm going to put up the graph here. The graph here shows the relationship between two bends and the rotation of the pelvis and the rib cage. So that's really important to keep in mind. It's the relationship between the rib cage and the pelvis. So the green line is the relationship from the, let's just call it the down the line bend, how much the pelvis is over in relation to the thorax or the rib cage here. The silver plot is the side bends or the lateral bend difference between the pelvis and the rib cage. And the blue plot is the rotation, the rotational, let's just call it difference between the rib cage and the pelvis. And the key concept I just want you to keep in mind here that I'm going to highlight is that you can notice here that as the green plot falls down, so does the silver plot and so does the blue plot. And that there highlights the concept of that in the golf swing, we replace the bend that we're over in address in the sagittal plane or the down the line plane with lateral flexion or side bend on the lead side. Okay. And the other thing I want you to notice there from a concept standpoint is as we get to the top of backswing, the green plot never goes below the 0 line. So that shows that the player, even though as it drops they are extending there through backswing, sorry, it should be this way, as it drops they are extending through our backswing, but it never moves into extension. So this would come into another common fault that I see with a lot of players is at the top of backswing, the rib cage gets pointed quite high, reflecting extension of the spine. So from this side, or from me facing this way, it would reflect this way. When essentially at the top of backswing, and I've covered this in another video, we want the rib cage to sit down, pointing more down and behind us in our top of the backswing position. So one reason I wanted to discuss the bends is because, let's just say from a common fault standpoint, I see a lot of players achieve their left bend or their lead side bend very early. So I'm just going to put up a plot here, and you'll notice in this plot how the silver plot dips below the blue. So that shows me that the player is achieving rotation by, let's just call it excessive left side bend rather than, let's just say, other areas that would be more optimum. And what happens when a player does that is you'll notice later on, or not always, but often I do see that when a player starts with that left bend dipping below the blue, is that later on in backswing, as you can see, the green plot dips below the 0 line, so they end up in extension at the top. So that is a fairly common pattern that I've seen. So just to build awareness around how we could move, I'm just going to put these sticks in here to reflect the bends of the pelvis. And I'm just going to face the camera this way now. So you'll notice if I stand in this position, almost a start position here, if I was hitting towards the camera, if I was to do the common error that I'm discussing today, early in the swing, a lot of left bend, you'll see how much closer the sticks move together there very early in the swing. So I do want to say at this point is that once we move through the start point to the top, it is going to look as though they are not as well matched. However, early in the swing, the space between this stick and that stick, because the rotation starts top down in the golf swing, if I go the very first phases there, you'll notice that they still match quite nicely. So that is us rotating, achieving rotation top down, unless I would say a more optimum way for a lot of people. So that's a nice little drill to do there. And that there is literally to about here in the golf swing. So literally through that takeaway phase. So it's through the takeaway phase that I see this happen, and then all of a sudden, as the player then moves to the top, so they go to there, and as the player moves to the top, they end up in this extended position of the spine. And I've just seen a lot of compensations through transition, downswing, not be too helpful for the player. One common one that I see is just adaptations around the lead hip, not being able to move through with as much speed as it could do in control. So really important, going back to just those early phases, if we can achieve that rotation by the bends flowing, as we showed in the graph before, a little bit more matched. So little exercise there if you've got sticks at home or even a club to do across your shoulders at least, just to help you to build that awareness. And then once you've gained that little bit of feel, and actually before I put this away, won't need the smaller one actually, one common flaw that I also want to go over is that concept that I've seen a lot of players have, where they have to feel like they get their shoulders pointed down on the ball. That's one thing that I see a lot of the time leading to potentially achieving that not so ideal top of backswing. So if I was to go here and do that move again in backswing, you'll notice that my shoulders don't point down at the ball. It's actually quite a bit out in front of me, and that there, and then just as far as like a rotational standpoint, anytime I'm going this way here, it's going to hinder rotation in the backswing. So we want to keep that side, this lead side, nice and long as we're doing that move throughout backswing there, instead of getting it sort of really short and crunched throughout that lead side. So that's just one little area there just to also keep just to be aware of. Okay, so training it, hitting shots. Whenever training and hitting shots or working on something new, I like to start with the feels away from the ball, getting clear on how you could move, getting clear on the difference between where you were and where you would like to go, and then just consider the pace of training those newer feels that you want to take out onto the range of the golf course. So again, if I was to be training something like this, a lot of takeaway feels where I'm going to go nice and slow, where I feel in the swing that I can actually differentiate between old and new, or older concept and newer concept, whatever we want to call it. So that's my feel there. I can feel I'm not so much this way, staying nice and long through that lead side, and then from there maybe then a nice move to the top, feeling like my rib cage stays more down and behind rather than get extended. And then when I do that, the common feedback I get from a lot of players is how much room they have for their arms then in downswing, because with that rib cage down and the arms being nicely in front, there's a lot of room then to move into transition. Okay, so as far as training, one rehearsal being very slow, very clear. Ask yourself the question, were you able to differentiate between older pattern and newer pattern? And then move into, I would try some shots. This is what a lot of people find very challenging, where they're going to move nice and slow through backswing and almost pause and then hit. So I'll show you one of those. So I'm in here again. I can feel there in the rehearsal that I'm keeping that rotation. So going into backswing nice and slow, there's the pause. Let's hit one. And it is really quite challenging to move at that pace when you're on the range, but it just provides great feedback from a feel standpoint. So my thing that I love about that is it helps players get more into feel than trying to think their way through the movements. So try that process of being clear on where you're going from and where you want your movement to go to. Then go out on the range, rehearse without hitting a shot, nice slow pace, feel the difference yet again. And then on the ball, let's just hit some shots moving quite slowly through the phase that you want to see the improvement. And yeah, be interested to see how that helps some people out there. It's a common thing that I've seen actually out there in some YouTube videos, people queuing and asking questions around lead side bend and how much bend should you get throughout backswing and things like that. The reality is how much bend you should be getting in the backswing really relates to you, and how you achieve that rotation is very much relates to you as well. So as much as this stuff here is, I feel, would apply to many, still I encourage you to go out there and just seek the best way for you to swing a golf club. So if you have any questions, of course, as always, please just drop me a message.